welcome our guest, Steve Chapman. He's a friend and a long-term inspiration, also the founder of Shine Drink, which we'll go into. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Good to see you and be here.
Good to see you as well. So, Steve, as I understand, you've been in the world of entrepreneurship since the very beginning when you were quite young. I want to go back to those roots. How did you fall into entrepreneurship? And I guess, just by way of this podcast, what we want to get out of it is high performance habits. So we're going to go into high performance habits and what you've done in your life to perform at such an optimal and peak level, which is why you've been such an inspiration to me and so many other entrepreneurs. But we're going to start off with, how did you start this journey? Tell us about what led you to start your first business.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. Let's hope I can live up to some of the hype. For me, I can think as a kid, I was always very entrepreneurial. I don't know if that was a word back then, but, I remember I couldn't read a book, as a child. I thought I had probably like a reading problem. And I had a speech problem, to be honest. And, dyslexia probably was in the mix. And then I picked up Branson's book, like his autobiography one year. And I read it cover to cover in a weekend. I was like, what the hell happened? Like I could finally actually finish a book when my brother was making fun of, not being able to finish Harry Potter or not getting past the first chapter. And so something clicked in me about entrepreneurship, starting businesses, selling products, getting people around a vision and kind of creating a bit of fun, a bit of a project. So, probably started, my dad was, both parents were small business owners. So I probably saw that was a credible career path, more than most. And then just remember my dad just working super, super hard, not being around much for the family. I think he was like Sunday lunchtime, we'll go into his office and we'll catch up for the week, or mum's small business, but probably prioritize the family more and would drop us off to pick us up from school and take us to sports and all those things. So I think the combination of dad, probably striving to get his acceptance and love was probably a part of it. And my mum was like unconditional love. So you can try anything in the world and fail and I still love you. So it was like a safety net love whilst strive for ambition for dad's love. So maybe a combination of that from a psychoanalysis perspective led to me with a bit of chip on my shoulder, trying to, prove myself or prove the world about myself. So then it was as a kid, start car wash business, I'd hire the local kids and pay them $2 to wash a car. And I'd, convince the parents to pay me $20 and get the $18 margin. And then, did that with the paper route, newspapers. And I think everyone around me at the time was like, oh, you'd be good at business. I remember importing GHD hair straighteners. I'm not sure if you've used them in the past or you own a few, but I was amazed they were $500 or something like that back in the day. And I could find them on eBay in the US for $150. So then imported them over, matched them up with these little local power adapters. And then, we're selling them in Bondi Junction street corners after school to all the eastern suburbs girls after school. So, fun stuff like that, which maybe felt like work or, a job to some, but just felt like play to me. And people around me was like, oh, you'd be good at business. So started looking down that path of what actually that meant. And in high school, my two top subjects was business studies and economics. I just loved that. Understand how businesses worked, how the economy worked, etc. So most people out of high school, I think you can't really get into investment banking or M&A or buying and selling businesses, so to speak, in private equity. So, I started at the PwC route, the big four accountancy firm, which had a better reputation back then than it did now. Yeah. And that was, suit and tie. 2 weeks after I finished high school, I was kind of walking into the city, trying to learn business, and very quickly found myself auditing, Westpac's financial accounts. And I'm like, this isn't what I was doing as a kid. Very, very different. And I started kind of researching more and more into the business world of entrepreneurship and reading about Zuckerberg and what he was doing at Facebook and more about Branson and Elon Musk early days. And that just kind of lit me up. So, started down the path of starting my first business whilst at PwC. So it's kind of the roundabout way of how I got into it. I tried the traditional route of big corporate business, but couldn't last more than 2.5 years there at PwC.
So you were in your early 20s when you started your first business?
Yeah, officially kind of pen to paper on it, probably 19, and then launched it when I was 20.
What was the business about?
It was called FaceBuy, which was Facebook marketplaces, pretty much exactly what that is today. But this was what, 12, 13, 14 years ago. So it was like before they'd come out with marketplaces, I had an idea that Facebook would get into social commerce. eBay, Gumtree, I felt was a little bit outdated for our generation. Like I saw all these buy, sell, swap groups happening on Facebook, and I thought, surely there's going to be, some social commerce happening here. So I created a platform which integrated with Facebook, and it could have an auction system, a payment system, reviews, in-app messaging. You could filter by location, you could filter by friends, or, people outside of friends, mutual friends. So the idea was right. The execution was just shockingly poor for a 20-year-old with no experience in building, development and in apps and design and fundraising and like the 1,000 things you need to do that type of business. I had zero experience and couldn't figure it out quicker enough, to be honest. So that one ended in tears a bit.
What was your hardest lesson from that business?
It would be something like, any idiot can learn from their own experience. The true competitive advantage comes from the experience of others. And it's a kind of stoic philosophy that I picked up along the way, which is really about, leveraging other people's experience and trying to find people smarter than you have done it before. Tony Robbins talks about success leaves clues. It's like find successful people and then really try and figure out what was the steps they took to get successful, and you follow those same steps and you probably end up in around about the same situation of success. So I didn't do that for my first business, and I kind of put my head down, thought I was, that, social media, the Social Network movie with about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and stuff. And he's like, fuck you, I'm the CEO, like on his title, and he's got his hoodie and he's like got this attitude and he thinks he's just like the guy who can take on the world. And, and he did. So I probably picked up that was like the persona of entrepreneurs I needed to adopt if I was going to try and get Facebook to try and buy me. I thought that would be a good strategy. So yeah, I didn't do the work. I didn't ask questions. I didn't have mentors. I didn't, ultimately I had an ego, I think, which was blocking my self-awareness for where my blind spots were. So then I couldn't truly address them. They were just always going to be the roadblocks to whatever I tried to do. And
where do you think that ego came from?
Definitely school. I got bullied initially when I kind of came from like a public school into a private school, and I felt a little bit of an outsider. I had a speech impediment, so I got a bit bullied around my speech. And then, particularly wasn't great with girls or anything like that. So I just found myself developing this ego because I was trying to protect myself, I guess, and not let the comments and what they were saying about me hurt, and try and pretend like it didn't, and try and build up this kind of false identity or mask, I guess, or a bodysuit or an armor, whatever you want to call it. But, then I became obsessed with trying to be good at sports and trying to be good at academics and trying, again, like try and just, I don't know, gain validation of myself or acceptance, through achievement. And I think I forgot that I was wearing the bodysuit. I forgot I was wearing the ego. And that then led into PwC when I was like in a suit and tie at 18, and I felt, pretty cool with the corporate card and all the rest of it. And that was more than my friends, had done at the time. So I felt, I was winning in some shape or form, and my parents were really proud of me. So I then took that into startup land and thought I was, and I think I got voted like, top 25 entrepreneurs under 25, and, these, watch out kind of kids to look out for in startup land. So there's a lot of people telling me that, I was successful or something, or I was going to be successful, and I just believed it before I had done anything, like I had no actual proof except for maybe some good intentions and maybe some good baseline skills, but I really hadn't done anything tangible that I should have believed what they were saying. So I think for me, I learned humility. And at the end of the day, to answer your question, like the biggest lesson was the impediment to action advances action. So the obstacle becomes the way. It's another Stoic principle, but like ego was my obstacle. Like that was just going to roadblock me whatever I did going forward, business or relationships or anything. So humility was my way forward. So then that's when I started reaching out to mentors and ended up getting, an apprenticeship with a billionaire now, Dr. Sam Prince. And that was my path through humility, I guess, back into entrepreneurship from a completely different standpoint.
I have so many questions that's just come up from that. I have questions around post this one, actually, for you to come to that realization that there were certain experiences as you were growing up that were then creating this ego. You've clearly done some self-work, right? So I'd love to hear about how you started on that journey of self-work. Like was it you've hit rock bottom and you weren't satisfied at that level? Some people are, and that becomes their new normal, but clearly you weren't. The other thing that comes up for me is the longest time that I've known you, I think it's 6 or 7 years now, I've always known you as a person with high levels of self-discipline. And generally from worldly observations, my observation suggests that as human beings, we only start to follow a path or a life of discipline when we have hit rock bottom. And again, we haven't been satisfied there. So it'd be interesting to go into that. But actually, let's go to the first point, because I think that's really interesting. What got you on the path of recognizing that this was an ego problem?
Yeah.
And then what are some of the things that you did to overcome this?
I think for me, pain is the answer. Sometimes they say the secret to health is when you're sick of being sick. And I think that's the same for any situation. Like the pain of staying needs to be greater than the pain of potentially going or losing by going. So for me, Ray Dalio talks about this in one of his books, and one of his principles is like pain plus reflection equals progress. And I'm like, I want progress. I don't want to stick at rock bottom and this abyss. And I got a lot of pain. So I'm like, in the equation, the missing piece is reflection. So I spent a lot of time reflecting, and some of that was forced because of the pain. So I felt like it was forced. Some of it was people asking questions of me saying, hey, what the hell went wrong? Why did you end up, that business FaceBuy, ended up getting sued by Facebook and lost $100,000 doing it, and it got shut down and deleted overnight. So I had to explain that. I had to try and explain that to myself, if no one else. But I borrowed money to do that, and I had friends and family going, "What the hell happened?" So it was more of an internal question, going from like most voted kid to succeed to what I felt was a rock bottom and a failure. I really wanted to try and understand what the hell went wrong. So for me, that's where the ego came up with. But also I've done, and still to this day, I've done a lot of like therapy and coaching and counseling and performance coaching, whatever you want to call it. But I've done everything from the spiritual side to the psychologist side to the, counseling and performance coaching side. So I think having other people who are trusted, respected, credible people, most importantly, helping you and, dig through the analysis to try and kind of give you a mirror back to yourself to try and find these insights, I think is super helpful. I did an exercise with Sam, my mentor, who we called it life biography, where we'd pretty much go year by year through each stage of our lives and try and firstly write down everything you could possibly think about that year. When I was 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or 15, whatever the year is, you'd go and get all the photos, all the report cards, all like everything you can data point wise, and just in an Evernote file or Google Docs, someone just like flesh out as much as you possibly can about that year yourself, and to write down what you think were the most significant impactful things that happened in that life. Who were your friends? What was your family? And then secondly, you'd go talk to people from that year. So you'd go, hey, Joey, I haven't seen you since year 6, but like, what was I like in year 6? Like you were, I think you talk to your friends, you get one view, you talk to your enemies. They're like the first to point out the shit that you did wrong. And then you talk to like just the mutual bystanders who just was that kid in your class for 6 years, but you never really were friends with him, but you weren't not friends with him. So they've got like this really independent view, potentially of you as well. So if you can talk to teachers, do that, principals, family members, whatever it is. So, we did that year by year up until the present day. And then from that, you really try and go, wow, here's the top 10 most important things that happened in my life. Here's with the 5 perspectives from different people and my own memories on it. Because I think our brain can't tell the difference between memories and dreams. And like, so I think over 50% of our memories are kind of made up in more than one way. Like the exact specifics of it, the feelings of it, like we end up crafting the stories and then we plant them back in our brain and we think that happened, but often it really didn't, or the meaning we ascribed to it was probably could be changed or updated or modified with more data points. So I think that was probably one of the most helpful exercises for self-awareness I've done. It's a big piece of work. I think mine's like 40, 50,000 words and a lot of pages. And
how many months?
That would be, initially probably 6 months of doing it quite consistently on weekends and talking to people and things. And then I'll still try and update it like once a month or once every quarter at the moment to try and go, what happened in the last, 6 months or 12 months. And depends how much is going on. You might have just a few dot points or a few paragraphs.
Where has that exercise helped you the most? Have you been able to reframe some of the memories that weren't useful for you? And did it surprise you? What was the most surprising thing when you spoke to, say, one of the kids from school or teachers? Or
I think I was harsher on my past than they were. So I felt, what I described before about being bullied and like, I felt like I was an outsider. Some people were like, man, you were so cool and an insider and you always had a smile on your face and you're such a nice guy. And I was like, yeah, wow, like I forgot there's the beautiful moments of that, and we can kind of remember pain more than pleasure over time. So there's I think a balancing of perspective that happens through it. And then I think our brains are wonderful, wonderful machines, but they're very, very, very prone to biases. And these biases impact all of our decisions, big and small, and some of them being confirmation biases or, like competence versus accuracy, biases, or just discrimination biases internally. So I think, the ones how we view ourselves, if I don't know, from a relationship perspective, I've got some abandonment issues from something that happened with my mum when I was 15, like that's going to come up in a relationship. And then if this comes up in a relationship, I'm like, I'm getting angry at them for whatever reason, for example. And I'm like, actually, no, that's probably not about them. That's way more about me and what this brings up for me. And it's a wound and a trigger that I'm aware of. So then it immediately removes the blame from them, puts it back on self, empowers self to then do something with it, go whatever I need to do at the time, write about it, journal about it, process the energy flows, talk about it. Just being aware of it, I think it's not the battle, but you can't even start the battle without being aware. So, let's say it's 20, 30% of the journey is being aware, but you can't even start the other 70% until you're aware.
And from talk therapy or Western psychology to spirituality, what has been the most effective therapy for you? Where do you think you got the most powerful progress?
I do read a lot of books, and I do like to blend the science and the spiritual side of things. So I'll try and combine like a Zen Buddhist philosophy with like, CBT therapy. And really what a lot of that stuff was probably, based in some CBT stuff, but they were doing it, 10,000 years ago, at least 2,000 years ago. So it's a combination of both. I will say plant medicine has been an impactful part of the meditative process, and not from a fun social perspective, more from an insightful perspective of probably getting a new perspective internally and kind of seeing a version of truth or insight that once you kind of can't unsee. And that's been super helpful. But I'd say I've had coaches, and, I've had one coach where I had a session every fortnight for 4 years. So like, that's just doing reps. Like that's just going to the gym every fortnight for 4 years. Like you're just going to work on those muscles over time, which get better. So I think it's whatever methodology you're choosing, I think just choose it and stick to it consistently over time. And if it's meditation, or if it's plant medicine, or if it's coaching or performance coaching or whatever it is, I think you can't just read it once or do it once. It's like, you got to show up at the gym every day. If you want to get a six pack, you got to do the same for awareness or understanding of self and things.
Yeah. And just to add to that, from my own experience, it's what you enjoy as well. Just what, because you've got to make it a happy journey. I think that one of the things in my own journey of building self-awareness or healing all of these past wounds, again, just reframing a lot of experiences I've had when I was young, is initially it does start off really painful because you're suddenly bringing up lots of
Yeah.
things that you've wanted to block out and numb. But then over time, I've actually started to enjoy it. I really enjoy the process of discovering something new about the way that I've had a perception of
Yeah,
an
it's
experience.
fun once you see the benefit of it. I think, like all things, like once
Yes.
you see the results and it improves your life today by doing it, you'll then go, wow, that was super beneficial and the pain's worth it, so to speak. Like that pain plus reflection will lead to progress. And once you see the progress, you'll be, I got hooked on it and still am. So it seems to be working for me from a progress perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you do find it to be fun, the consistency is even easier, isn't it? So it's,
Yeah, it's a game, right? Like a game should be fun. We play and play has an element of fun. It has an element of progress in the pursuit of winning. It has an element in most games of, other people involved as well. So there's, team potentially sport of it. So yeah, I think I generally look at most things as play, or games, and then choose which games I want to play. And if I'm going to play them well, and then kind of understanding the mechanics of play in relationships or in self or in work or in business, whatever it may be.
And so what inspired you then to start Shine?
So I ended up getting this apprenticeship with Dr. Sam Prince, who's an incredible entrepreneur, and he had done a bunch of businesses prior, and I kind of wanted to learn as much as I could hands-on from him. And I did 3 years for him, initially as a personal assistant, just to get the foot in the door and learn humility, and then executive assistant, then more like a 2IC across the group of his companies. And we started some together, and I helped him run some. We raised some money. We started some charities. We, co-authored papers on entrepreneurship, and we got obsessed about entrepreneurship. And there's like awesome stuff we did there. And I was in the room with billionaires and Nobel Prize winners, and learn, a ton of things, 1,000 things about entrepreneurship as well. So that was like an MBA masterclass. I did drop out of uni, but that was really my kind of degree, so to speak, with Sam. And through that time, I just got obsessed. Like I got full all in, chips on the table on how do I become the best version of myself and the best entrepreneur that I could be. And, I started waking up at 4:24 a.m. and I started reading books every day, and I started meditating every day and going to the gym every day, stopped drinking alcohol, stopped being social, didn't take a holiday, didn't take weekends. Like it was too far, but needed at the time for me where I was at. And that was an awesome experience. And towards the end of that was like, how else can I keep optimizing, time management and productivity and energy levels? Because ultimately, like we've all got the same 24 hours in a day, but we've all got different energy levels. Like how much energy can you muster up and put to good use throughout the day? Because if you only got 2 hours of energy, but 24 hours, the other 22 hours are useless. Where if you could get energy for 24 hours or the most part of it, you're in a far better state for other people compared to their output. So part of that journey of just how do I optimize energy and how to optimize efficiency and productivity, we stumbled across the nootropics, these age-old ingredients that help optimize and energize the mind, particularly. So it's like ginkgo biloba and ginseng, green tea, B vitamins, L-theanine, with the natural versions and the plant versions of that. And then there was like the, more limitless Bradley Cooper Hollywood movie kind of version of you take a pill and you can see numbers floating from, the ceiling and you just start solving math equations in your head. So, there's versions of that out there like modafinil or, some of the more hardcore lab synthetic versions. And, we tried all of them under the sun to see what was the pros and cons. And we ultimately go, why isn't there a beverage or drink that's really easy way to get some of these natural, plant-based ingredients into your body and help your brain and all the rest of it? And, we looked at energy drinks, and energy drinks is like a $1.5 billion category in Australia, 100 billion globally. It's growing at 10% a year. It's like everyone I talk to knows they're not good for you. They're full of sugar, artificial, all the rest of it. But it really is a core need state or problem that people need to solve on a daily basis. How do I get more energy? How do I get a pick me up? So yeah, I guess the combination of our own personal passions and pursuits and, desire to optimize my day led to and then combined with the market opportunity of like, this is a big problem. Everyone needs it. No one's done it in a healthy, better for you way. Those two just kind of matched up, and, Shine was born in that intersection.
Very interesting. Did I just hear you say that you started waking up at 4:24?
Yes.
Okay, I have never heard that before. Let's go into that. What's with the 4:24?
Four is my favorite number, and Kobe Bryant is like a huge motivator, inspiration. I think whilst I never met the guy, I just felt like he was in my corner, and learn a lot from him and his discipline and work ethic and mindset. He's like, my goat of that. And so, his jersey number is 24, and I feel like there's a particular sacredness of having a minute to yourself. Like, a round number, like I get up at 6 or 5:30 or 5. It's like everyone does that. So like when you see the alarm go off, you're like, oh yeah, snooze, whatever, doesn't really make a difference. But like at 4:24, it's like that's your minute, like that's your moment, and like no one else is getting up at that. So if you don't get up within the minute, you're like, you've fallen off your perch a bit, and Kobe Bryant might be a bit disappointed with you. So I know it's just a mental trick that I did a long time ago randomly, and it just stuck with me, and then I could not get up at 4:24 and weekends and stuff included. So I did that for 5-6 years. I did do 3:24 for probably a while, but then I felt like I was probably getting too little sleep, and that was detrimental to my performance. So 4:24 felt the right amount of sleep whilst also still getting up. And I love hunting at dawn. I love getting up before people. I love having 2-3 hours of uninterrupted deep work. So yeah, I really enjoyed that number. And at the moment I've changed it. It's 4:44 now.
Okay. Yeah, and it is your favorite number, 4. So
Yeah.
with what do you do? There's people that do meditation or journal or exercise. Are you doing physical stuff, or are you actually doing actual work?
It has evolved over time, and generally I'd always plan the day. So I'd generally do maybe like 5 minutes. It could bleed on more, like a morning pages deep, just like kind of like mental flow of like whatever's on my mind. Like I wake up, whatever I dreamt about, whatever's on my mind, what I'm stressed about, what I've got for the day, whatever's on my mind, I'll just write down in my journal for probably for 5 minutes. Then I'll kind of highlight like what are the top 3 most important things for the day I need to get done. I'll generally try and schedule them then into the calendar, so I know it's between 9 and 10 and 2 and 1 and whatever it is. Make sure I've got time allocated to those most important things. I generally then like to get some sort of exercise in. So, at the moment it's more gym and CrossFit style, but it could have been running, it could have been anything. And then post that, try and get some cold exposure. So jump in the ocean or cold, but like ice baths or whatever it may be. And then, it'd be into work for 1 or 2 hours, from a deep work perspective, where it's like highly creative, don't need to interact with people, and get a presentation done or build an Excel model or build a strategic plan or whatever it may be.
And what other things? I think I remember once we spoke, you also stopped drinking alcohol. Is that still?
Yeah, I stopped drinking alcohol purely for 3 years, like 100%. And then it introduced back in my life in a very different way. Like I felt, pre, high school and kind of early 20s was, binge drinking, and you kind of go out with friends and you just super unproductive, and you have probably a toxic relationship with alcohol. I think now, and when I introduce it back into it, it'd be like generally more special occasions. It would be like a highlight of a moment. It might be from a social reason to do it. I don't feel like I need to do it to have social interactions because I had 3 years without it. So it's just a very different relationship with alcohol now. I'll go through phases of like doing like a 75 hard program where you kind of don't have alcohol for 75 days. And I've done that a couple of times. Or did a health kick training for marathon a couple months ago, and there was no alcohol in that. So I'll go through stints of not having it completely again, but didn't drink it whatsoever for 3 years. But now we'll have it occasionally.
Some of these habits that you talk about are really challenging for people that have never considered. They're quite extreme, right? Like waking up at that time before sunrise. Or what's your advice for someone who does want to go to the path of high performance, but just doesn't have the motivation or the enough of that discipline to start? What's the advice that you would give them?
I've been through times when I don't feel like doing it, and if the reason to do it isn't compelling enough, I just don't think it's going to last. I think you can whip yourself into action one day, 1 week, 1 month, but like that's where burnout, in my opinion, really comes from. It's when you're like, your actions aren't truly aligned to what you're trying to achieve. Like your aim, your goal, hopefully that's crystal clear. So that's probably part one. It's like, get clear on what you want. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want out of it? What does your ideal life look like? Like, not just like what would be a nice look like what does like an awesome, cool, amazing, exciting life look like, and work and projects and all the rest of it. And then come up with your best guess of like what's stopping you from having that. And it could be, hey, I need more money. It could be, I need a better relationship. I could be, I need to lose weight. I could be, and then you just solve those things. Like, and then you go, okay, well, let's say it's money. Okay, now let's go and learn about money and research about money and figure out the money game, and either improve your salary where it's at, or build wealth creation in the background with passive investment, or start a business, whatever it is. Like, but you now have like a hole to dig and solve. And same for, weight loss. It's mathematical in terms of calories in, calories out. But like, if you can see that as solving a problem to achieve this amazing, awesome, inspirational goal that you're trying to aim towards, and life you're trying to build for yourself, I think then that's not as much of it as I'm whipping myself, and I'm like, put myself in a chamber of, of hell to try and get to this outcome. It's like, no, it should be pulling you. And if it's not pulling you, you probably got the wrong goal, or you haven't even thought about it. I think 80% of people just haven't even put it down on paper. And it's like, put it on paper, start talking about your goals every day, start looking at them all the time, start getting excited and feeling the emotion of what it would be like to actually achieve them. That shit's going to get you up early before an alarm clock. Like, that will get you going. And I found it recently because I've stepped away from Shine a couple of months ago, and I've just kind of been cruising and chilling out and took some time off and did some travel. And now I'm like, and towards the end of Shine, I felt as like it was like a harder time to get myself going all the time, because there's just a lot of, and there always is, challenges, people management, cash and marketing, competitors and all this stuff. Like, you do need a bit of a reset sometimes. And, but now I'm up at 444, or beforehand, I'm just like ready to go again. I don't need the extra sleep where I felt like I needed the extra sleep maybe a few months ago. So it's probably like, one, understanding energy, because without energy, you can't do anything. So then energy management is going to be like sleep, diet, exercise. Like, they're the fundamentals. Like, get good sleep, get good diet, get good exercise. If you do those 3 things, you're like 90% of the way there with energy management. So like, make sure you got enough fuel in the tank to then like get in the car and drive towards your goals, so to speak.
Yeah. It also reminds me of that earlier point you made, that the pain of staying where you are needs to be greater than like the pain of, what was it, not getting what you want. It's like, that's the pinnacle of change, right? The equation of change.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and they talk, I think it's like a boiling frog analogy, where it's like, if you put a frog in cold water and then turn up the heat and it starts boiling, the frog will stay there and it dies. But if you get a frog and put it straight into boiling water, it jumps the hell out. And I think our environment can sometimes be so insidious where it can just be worse in our environment all the time. Like, we might have poor habits, we might have poor relationship, we might have poor mental, script for ourselves, and we don't really realize it. It's like, oh, look, my drinking's not too bad, or my weight's not too bad, or my work's not too bad. And, like, good is the enemy of great. Like, if everything's okay and good, you're not going to make the change required to get to great. But if everything's on fire, like, you can generally make those drastic changes you need. But I really hope people don't have to hit rock bottom to get there. Like, I really hope that the goal can be compelling enough of great that they do get out of a 6 and chase a 10, versus wait until their life becomes a 2 and then forcing themselves into chasing 10s.
And then the other thing to add to this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, it's also us, like, we're a product of the people that we're around, right? I've often found that if I want to make a change, when I'm starting to spend time, and it doesn't happen overnight, you certainly need to start working effectively on changing the people that you're around over a period of time. But it's, who do you want to be like? I think one of the things that really has helped me in my journey of progress is identifying who am I inspired by, and then spending more time with those people, because you kind of get drawn and inspired the more you're talking to them, the more you're engaging with them. And then there's also this whole thing around possibility. You realize if someone else can do it, you can do it. And so that also has such a massive impact. I think I often see people, they're hanging around the same individuals but wanting to make big changes. But if your friends love pizza every Friday night and that's what they love or not even Friday night, but 3 times a week, and then you're doing that, it's really hard to stick to those, as an example, nutrition habits or.
Yeah. And the like scary side of that, without being too political or anything, but like if you put a human being in a certain environment, like they'll do the worst things you could imagine. And that's in history shown us time and time again. Like we think, oh, I'll never do that. I'll never let myself get that bad. And these slippery slopes of decisions are based on our environment. But if the government's supporting it and your friend group's supporting it and the community supporting it, and it's completely outlandish to not do it, you would find yourself doing some stuff that you put yourself 6 months earlier, you would never in a million years think you'll do. So that works both ways. It's like the most powerful positive impact on us is our environment, and the most powerful negative is our environment. And the people, like, we're very, 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 very socially minded animals. There's the theory, which I think is probably the most powerful theory around decision making, is mimetic theory. Like we have so many mirror neurons in our brain that at all times are looking at the people closest to us, the people we follow on social media, our society, our culture, our commentators, our politicians. And we're always trying to like figure out, are we aligned to our, community or group or culture? And if not, like start micro adjusting to do that. And we know this because we can look at any purchase we've made in the last 30 days. I guarantee if you were truly intellectually honest with yourself, you could count it back to, I saw someone I liked, admired, respected, made that same purchase. Like it popped up somewhere in your ecosystem of going, oh yeah, someone liked that. They liked it. I saw a watch that looked like that and they had it. I saw them drive a car and now I like those cars. And it's like, we like to think we're like these independent decision-making, in a vacuum, but it's like, no, we generally just like to fit in and we look up to people. And if they have it, we generally like and want it as well. So, it's powerful from a marketing perspective. They figured out a long time ago that, and hence why Beyonce is on a Calvin Klein ad or whoever it may be. It's like, we don't care about Calvin Klein. We care about Beyonce. And if she's wearing Calvin, we want Calvin. So, but that happens in our little micro decisions, not just purchases. It happens in the food we eat, the self-talk, the beliefs, what we can achieve, what we can't achieve, businesses we start or don't, the jobs we have or don't. It's all based on who we're looking up to and around.
Well, we can tell you read a lot of books. So this is probably coming to the end of our conversation. I think I can talk to you for hours, and we might have to do a second part with taking more deeper dive into Shine. But just to end today's discussion, what are your 3 top book recommendations?
For me, at least from what's changed my life, I'd say one is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. That was the pivotal moment in my life to learn humility. I think Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a beautiful one, which talks about, I guess, the last of our human freedoms is our ability to control how we respond to things. And regardless of our most horrific situations we might be in, I think that book is a really powerful self-empowerment book of going, choosing our own response to things is our reality, so to speak. And then lastly, I think I'm going to go super practically and old school. I'll talk about maybe how to win friends and influence people. I think influence and friendship and sales and things like that will help most people get what they want in life. So that might be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I feel like I don't need to read any books. I can just sit with you for an hour and get summaries of the best texts out there.
Thank you. No, really good to chat. And happy anytime to have a catch up.
Thanks, Steve.